They didn't steal your freedom. They taught you to give it away willingly. No soldiers. No chains. No violence. Just stories. A century ago, power ruled through force. Kings ruled through fear. Empires ruled through blood. But then someone discovered something far more efficient. You don't need to control what people do if you can control what they want. That man was Edward Bernays. He never held public office. He never ran for election. He never commanded an army. And yet, he shaped modern politics more than most presidents in history. Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He understood something most politicians didn't. Humans are not rational. We like to believe we are. We tell ourselves stories about logic and choice. But beneath that surface, our decisions are driven by fear, desire, identity, and the need to belong. Bernays didn't speak to people's minds. He spoke to their subconscious. In the 1920s, democracy was fragile. Elites were afraid. The Russian Revolution had shown what happens when the masses become angry. Workers were organizing. Women were demanding rights. The poor were no longer quiet. The question facing Western elites was simple and terrifying. How do you control the masses without using violence? How do you rule without looking like a ruler? Bernays had an answer. He called it the engineering of consent. One of his most famous experiments began on Fifth Avenue in New York. At the time, it was socially unacceptable for women to smoke in public. Tobacco companies were losing half the market. They didn't want to argue with science. They didn't want to argue with doctors. They hired Bernays. Bernays didn't sell cigarettes. He sold liberation. He organized a group of young women to walk down Fifth Avenue during an Easter parade. At a signal, they lit their cigarettes together. Photographers were waiting. The next day, newspapers ran the headline, "Women light torches of freedom." Smoking was no longer a health hazard. It was a political statement, a symbol of equality, of rebellion, of identity. Sales to women increased by hundreds of %. Lung cancer followed decades later. Bernays understood something fundamental. People don't buy products. They buy stories about who they are. And once he realized that, democracy was no longer about ideas. It was about perception. In 1928, Bernays published a book with a simple, chilling title, Propaganda. In it, he wrote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society." He didn't say manipulation was a problem. He said it was necessary. He went further. He explained that those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society form an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of the country. Read that again carefully. Bernays wasn't exposing a conspiracy. He was describing a system. Democracy, he argued, cannot function if people think independently. Too many opinions create chaos. Too many ideas threaten stability. The masses must be guided. Their desires were shaped. Their anger was redirected. This wasn't a theory. Bernays applied it everywhere. He convinced Americans to eat bacon for breakfast by persuading doctors to say it was healthy. He worked for presidents, for corporations, for governments. He helped overthrow the government of Guatemala on behalf of the United Fruit Company by framing land reform as communist infiltration. The word propaganda began to sound dirty after World War I. So Bernays rebranded it. He called it public relations. Same function. Better packaging. This is where democracy changed forever. Before Bernays, power was visible. After Bernays, power became psychological. You were no longer ruled. You were managed. Political campaigns stopped being about policy. They became about identity, about emotion, about branding. You don't vote for ideas. You vote for feelings, for symbols, for stories that tell you who you are. This is why modern politics feels strange, loud, emotional, divided. And yet, no matter who wins, the structure remains the same. Because democracy was never designed to give you power. It was designed to give you participation. Participation feels like power. But it isn't. The architects of modern democracy were not idealists. They were terrified aristocrats. They saw revolutions. They saw mobs. They saw what happens when people realize their numbers. So they built a pressure valve. Give people the feeling of control without actual control. Let them vote, but only within safe boundaries. Let them argue, but never about the architecture itself. Bernays made this possible at scale. He understood that if you can define what is normal, what is acceptable, and what is unthinkable, you don't need censorship. People will censor themselves. This is why you are encouraged to fight endlessly about culture, identity, and symbolism. These arguments feel meaningful. They are emotional. They are exhausting. And they are safe. As long as people fight horizontally, they don't look vertically. As long as you argue about which politician is morally superior, you don't ask who funds both campaigns. As long as you are outraged about words, gestures, and symbols, you don't notice that economic decisions are made without you. Bernays turned democracy into a performance. And performances need audiences. Modern voters are not citizens. They are consumers. Political parties are brands. Campaigns are marketing strategies. Elections are product launches. Your ballot is not a weapon. It is a receipt. This is why you are allowed to choose between options that lead to the same destination. Different colors. Different slogans. Same outcomes. Bernays understood that the most stable system is one where people believe they are free. If you force obedience, people resist. If you persuade consent, people defend the system for you. This is the genius and the horror of modern democracy. It doesn't silence dissent. It absorbs it. Moneizes it. Redirects it. Your anger becomes content. Your activism becomes branding. Your rebellion becomes entertainment. Bernays did not lie to the world alone. He taught institutions how to lie professionally. He taught governments how to speak the language of morality while holding power. He taught corporations how to wrap exploitation in the aesthetics of freedom. He taught democracy how to survive in an age where truth was dangerous. And it worked. Today, you are surrounded by choices, products, parties, opinions, platforms. It feels like freedom. But look closer. 10 corporations control most of what you consume. A handful of investment firms own them all. The media tells you what to fear. Algorithms decide what you see. And you never voted on any of it. You are free to choose from the menu. You are not allowed to question who wrote it. Bernays believed people should be managed for their own good. He believed truth was less important than stability. He believed democracy needed illusion to survive. The uncomfortable truth is this: he may have been right. Without manipulation, democracy collapses into chaos. With manipulation, it becomes control disguised as choice. This is not a broken system. This is a designed one. Bernays didn't destroy democracy. He made it efficient. And once you understand that consent is engineered, not earned, you begin to see the pattern everywhere. In elections, in advertising, in the media, in culture. Nothing looks neutral anymore. This is not the end of the story. This is the foundation. Because Bernays didn't build the entire machine, he only wrote the instruction manual. In the next chapter, we will step back from the man and examine the full architecture of how democracy became theater, how freedom became a brand, and how participation replaced power. Because once you see how the illusion works, you can never unsee it. And the question is no longer who you will vote for next. The question is whether consent given under illusion was ever consent at all.